Hello. Hopefully you all can hear me. Glad I have a mic up here. Testing, testing. Guess I'll turn this up a little bit more. All right. My second live. This is fantastic. Christina Reyes, thanks for tuning into this live. And I think I'll go back and forth. As you noticed last week, I had a different background. So I'll try to switch it up, now and then to have a different, type of environment where I can do these as often as I can. So this one may be a little bit longer than the last one. I didn't realize live streams went as quickly as opposed to when I'm talking audio on my podcast. So as you can see from the title and the image, I tried to choose an image where I won't get flagged by YouTube, but it is about hate crimes and anti-white agenda and genocide. So you've heard this time and time again, um, the number of whites that are supposed to be dying out. It's decreasing by 2047 or 2050. Whites would be a minority, supposedly. Now, it does concern me because, let's be honest, there are racial and ethnic groups that are civilized. Okay, whites disappear where we're going to have something as simple as clean drinking water. So Jared Taylor, race realist, a lot of people are triggered by his honesty about race. In case you don't know what a race realist is, um, someone that tells the truth based on observation and data to back it up about how different racial and ethnic groups behave and why they behave the way they do globally. So the first time I recognized this person was during back in the mid 90s. I believe it was 94, 95. I was still in high school. And Queen Latifah, after her sitcom Living Single fell through, not very successful, maybe like 3 or 4 seasons, a typical black show. And so she had a talk show in the evening. I think she replaced Montel Williams. And it was about racial profiling. And they had 3 or 4 people that were victims. I think there were 2 or 3 black guys and one. I remember one black lady specifically. And they brought Jared Taylor on. Now I cannot find the complete show. I wish I could. Maybe I can email him and see if he has it, because he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But he really triggered some people. I was kind of disturbed. Like, how can he just generalize like that? So he went by, age, gender, and race. So when you think of armed robbery, you're not going to think of a 65-year-old white woman. So he said young people tend to commit more crimes than older people. Like the example I gave, I went by age, race, and gender. No, you're not going to expect a 65-year-old woman. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible that she's a suspect, but that's not who you're going to look for based on stats and data. So he said when it comes to gender, men are more dangerous than women. True. Men do commit more crimes than women. I mean, we're against women, against another man, against children, unfortunately. I mean, they're just the stronger sex. And it's all due to the fallen man and sin. I mean, I'm not blaming this and saying, okay, all men do this, okay? Then he went to race, okay? So between the two racial groups, believe it or not, it's whites and blacks on a global scale. All the other people are Hispanics and Arabs and even Asians. They're all ethnicities, okay? But in this country, we got to have this long list of racial group. No, they're going by phenotype. I can pass as an Arab or Hispanic woman. So between the two racial groups, that's how we vision people. And this is global. You see a black person, you're going to say he's black. You see a white person who appears white, you're going to say he's white. So Mr. Taylor said between the two racial groups, when it comes to crime, that blacks tend to be more dangerous than whites. And that just went in uproar. But he did begin by saying if there was injustice done, by all means, these people, meaning the people that were racially profiled, should report that, as they should. I wouldn't be on a talk show talking about it. I'm going to get that person's badge number and I'm going to report them. Now, whether they did that or not, maybe a few of them, but you go and you talk and report these people who did this. Okay. But generally, across the board, in most cases, when Black Americans are stopped by the police, they give the cop attitude and just make life worse for themselves. Over the past decade or so, we saw many incidences where it also led to deaths of a lot of Black people simply for not complying. Now, I digress. He had a lot of people, but again, it was only the 2 minutes or so. Again, I don't remember the complete video. And a lot of people may say he's racist, but hey, between the two racial groups, I've had, by the grace of God, I haven't been physically assaulted by a black guy, but I have been threatened by a couple, and these were strangers. So I'm very self-cautious, and honestly, I don't blame white people who do this cross the street, especially at night when they see a black guy. Probably knows so much me. I mean, I'm only 5'2", so I'm short, and if a white guy is passing me, he's not gonna. Most likely, he won't cross the street unless I'm with my brother, for example, because he's more likely to overpower him, not to take his chances. With that being said, where am I going with this? Jared Taylor was at a recent CPAC event this past February. I was going to go, but I already went to the one in July, and I didn't see the list of guest speakers. So I didn't know who was going to be there, and I didn't want to waste my time listening to useless people. And I think the only interesting people that were there anyway were DeSantis and I think Charlie Kirk. Maybe Candace Owens was there, I'm not sure. But not as many well-known guests as this past summer. So he asked about 45 white people, for 3 or 4 different questions. One about diversity, the concern of whites becoming a minority, um, and I think, I don't know what violence, because I'm going to get to that in a minute. And this whole critical race theory, I knew it was going to come down to this. Well, if you think interracial crimes, blacks on whites, and now you have it on Asian, is not happening, we got another thing coming. So, the white advocates that the patriot patrons that he asked the question to, uh, a lot of them were given no answers, meaning that they weren't concerned about that until something now, unless they've been physically assaulted by a non-white person, mugged, petty theft, uh, armed robbery, physical assault with these knockout gangs for no reason, then maybe a few of them probably would have given a yay. Okay. Uh, so yeah, it's just interesting how he, because a lot of times whites, especially males, straight Christian white males, there's a microscope under that's ready to just stump on him if he says the wrong thing, or they think the wrong thing, or looking for racism even though it's not there. You heard what happened to the two cops recently when I did the video about Brett, I believe his name is Hankinson, that was acquitted for the murder of Breonna Taylor. And then his friend John Mattingly, he didn't go to court at all. It was self-defense. He was shot, so he was a victim in itself. But the real harassment came from patriots, people from media, liberal media, entertainers, um, Snoop Dogg being one of them, Oprah, uh, of course, LeBron James, still not going to shut up and dribble about anything, really ostracized this man on Twitter. So if anything, he got it worse. So far, he's safe now. I saw him on Megyn Kelly's show, and he seems to be doing quite well. He did an interview as well on Good Morning America, and the interviewer, who was the black guy, actually shook his hand after the interview and said, "You know, you are a nice guy." But when he got back to the panel, he didn't say that. His words changed. So I think he was more concerned about his job, so he won't be ostracized like Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General of Kentucky, was when he thought the cops were not guilty for this case. So I want to talk about two stories for the time being. One is in a couple of counties in Florida where 5 middle school students, okay, arrested for allegedly attacking white students. Now, middle school, when you think of that, first off, I don't understand. I know children probably at that time probably recognized race, but who's thinking about race in middle school age? What is that, like sixth, seventh grade? Wait, 11, 12 years old? And yet you want to attack someone based on race because of some misunderstanding? So yeah, they attacked, a few of them were, and I don't think it was just black people, because the first attacker said, "You're the opposite," he shouted. I'm like Brown Power or La Raza or something like that, while assaulting these kids. And um, one kid, he was, being, just punched and stumped. The best thing he can do was cover his head, okay? Because that's, a defense mechanism when there's so many people out to get you. You're going to protect. That's the best mechanism to protect yourself unless you have a weapon. And then what was really disturbing before I go into the other examples of these attacks is that he was afraid to go back to school, but he would go back because of his friends. Now, my question is, where were these friends when he was being attacked? To at least help him or pull him, you know, intervene, stand in front of them, do something. So you got friends like that, you definitely don't need any enemies. Then there was a black kid that shouted, "This is for 1770 slavery." Like he would know anything about that. I mean, unless he was lied to. 1770 slavery. See, I knew this critical race theory thing because many of us don't know what it is. And they changed the name over time. I guess depending on the school, instead of teaching these children, if you're going to teach history, tell the truth. Okay? Don't tell the truth just based on something that you see from some black movie, because it's not going to be true. And yes, and that includes the movie Roots. We discovered that story wasn't true. So if you're going to teach history, and I believe like by high school, I think you have to have, if it's still required, three classes of history. One of them must be U.S. history. They should make it all 4 years, and your first 2 years, no, your last 2 years, learn U.S. history, and then take the Constitution test, and at least make an 80%. That sounds harsh, but these children are being misguided. There was speaking of the Constitution, the Hodge twins did a recent story on this dude looking like Frederick Douglass. I know that sounds funny, but he did. His appearance with this big afro, graduate from Harvard, okay, writes a book about the Constitution. Now, I could tell this man knows nothing about the Constitution because first he denies what was in there. Then he mentions something about the slave trade. And neither race nor the slave trade is mentioned in there. Now, unless you're talking about the 13th Amendment, where slavery is abolished, okay, that I can understand. But if you're still talking about like I mean, I don't know. Any American that buys that stupid book, I question this country at this point. So hopefully, by the story coming out of Florida, hopefully DeSantis really does something about this because it's really getting out of hand and getting ridiculous about how these children are being treated. Even if he has to like pass some type of hate crime bill, because if nothing is done, it's going to happen again. And this time, it may lead to these kids' lives. Okay. So, what was it like? What does it say? Yeah. Okay. And we find out about this. I found out about this on Fox News, by the way. That's docked here. And now NBC is still liberal. You really can't believe what they say. But Fox News definitely reported this, and I'm glad. Now, the next story is in Fairfax. So remember I did a story, you can go back and look at it. I uploaded a video about the Fairfax case where they had these military parents and they played some type of bingo privilege type of game. And you had to fill in so many boxes. They called a phrase like grew up in a two-parent household. I don't know what that got to do with privilege, but you should. I mean, the best way to raise a child is in a two-parent household. So they give these kids, this silly game, and in a nutshell, I don't even think it worked, but I got a lot of views on it. And then I believe Jared Taylor did a podcast about it the following day. Then you had the case in Georgia where a black principal had white and color signs. Of course, there were more white students, so they had more classes. I believe they had like 6 classes compared to the black students. They had 2. And what's even more disturbing about that, she put up white and colored signs. Okay, not even black, right? Over restrooms and water fountains. Now, you would assume that a white person done this, but this principal was black. So when one concerned parent who was black reported that, and I'm surprised the white parents didn't say anything. All over the news, hopefully, either pull your children out of an environment like that or have this principal replaced. Then you have the Jesse Juicy, whatever his name is, Smollett case. They're thinking of taking him out, and then he, of course, this accusation of racism. Here comes the gaslighting again from Taraj Henson, the lady that played Katherine Johnson on Hidden Figures. Very nice, very great patriot, Katherine Johnson. And there's even um, a space center named after her in Florida. And yet, Ms. Henson compared Juicy Smollett case to Emmett Till. Okay, unless as if they couldn't get any more ridiculous. So the story in Fairfax, Virginia, pretty conservative town, middle class families, very different than when I was there when I used to visit DC a lot. Several times, I even had a job interview. I went to a job fair in that county, very nice county. I think you can take the yellow or blue line there. And Asian of Indian ancestry by the name of Astra Naomi. I think I'm not Naomi. I think I'm saying her name correctly. Actually complained at, and this was at a federal courthouse, saying, racist, chanting this. It really doesn't get into detail what led to that, but this school was supposed to be about math and technology. Now, Asians are usually, they usually do well academically. And yet, I don't know if her students was feeling this, because that's what kids should learn in order to survive. Okay, this may hurt some feelings, but you're not going to get a good job taking Black and women's studies. It's just not going to happen unless you're teaching victimhood in some universities, some liberal university for liberal arts. That's pretty much the only job you're going to get. But reading, math, computer science, engineering, okay, anything with the arts and film, something that's going to be useful, journalism, media, okay, nursing, medical, anything that's going to be beneficial. Yes, children should learn those things. If they want to take a trade, finish high school, take that trade. It's because I'm not the one to, if a child like my brother, for example, college was not for him. So he took up classes to be a basic EMT, and now he's working at Northwestern University in Chicago, um, doing similar work, like some type of desk job in administration, I believe it is. So, yes, I mean, we want to do what's beneficial. That's going to help them a lot. I believe a lot of other conservatives have said this as well. The Patriot, Great Patriot, Thomas Sowell has said it. Candace Owens has said it. Excuse me, several times on the Tucker Carlson show. And then yet you have this lady. I don't even know how she got away with this, chanting racist, and maybe it has something to do with the curriculum. Maybe her children didn't measure up. It really didn't get into detail despite of the 5-page story or whatever. They're just saying, okay, this woman at Fairfax School is just chanting racist, 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 racist to um, while the judge is there, police officers there. Now, based on the image, I didn't see as many parents because I guess they know she was gonna rant and act a fool. So that's probably why they didn't end up there. But I this can't continue now. One thing that Dr. Carol Swain, she was also on Megyn Kelly. I was just watching Megyn Kelly's shows. I don't binge watch her shows. I did subscribe to her channel, but I mean, I listen to her more than Laura Ingraham. Okay, even though Megyn Kelly is not a conservative, but she has some interesting guests on her show. A woman jumping from Fox News and then having her own platform, transitioning from law to journalism like she did, very successful. And so at the end of the interview, I think it was about an hour long, Carol Swain said, when you're accused of racism, and it's usually non-white on white, the white person, because I'm saying the white person because that's who's usually called that, because everybody else can't be racist, right? Go figure. They should at least document it, especially if it's in the workplace, so you won't get yourself in trouble. If your supervisor doesn't listen, um, go to HR. If that doesn't work, Department of Labor, you can also complain to them. But no, you shouldn't let people get away with just with this name calling, because it used to be a case where, and Thomas Sowell said this, that people say racist because they've lost the argument. Now it's for bully, shame, because people have gotten, non-whites have gotten, in particular black and brown people, have gotten away with saying it for so long. And very little white people are checking them on it. It's just they use it for any and everything, even to the point of destroying a person's livelihood. A recent case of the Brooklyn lady that says, "Get out of my hood" or something like that, as she was walking her dog. Now the woman is drunk, okay, and instead of him, consulting with her, negotiate and say, okay, that was inappropriate. You owe me an apology, or just walk away, because people were, and he's a man. I mean, so that should just roll from your back. But you know what this beta goes and do? He goes to tweet, finds out this lady's name. I don't know how he did it. Found out this lady's name and ostracized her, found out where she worked, found out her supervisor's name, reported and called him, posted this on Twitter. When you on social media, I mean, everybody can see, especially his Twitter fans or followers or whatever. And then, of course, the lady got fired. So, yeah, this I think this bullying has to stop. But that's all I have. Hopefully, as I'm continuing with these, maybe right now I'm going weekly with these live streams and see how it works, and I'll continue uploading videos and keeping you all posted in what's happening in this great country and globally. Christina Red Soul, thanks for listening. Pray for our nation and our brothers and sisters in the persecuted church globally, as well as our brothers and sisters in Russia and the Ukraine. Talk to you super soon.